Danny in Charge is the 12th episode of the 4th season of Full House. This is directed by Zwick, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I think it's a really brilliant episode, and I imagine it's one that is quite relatable for a lot of parents if you're a single parent to more than one child. I can imagine there are going to be occasions when you're torn in different directions, and this is exactly what we see with Danny. It starts off rather adorably with Michelle celebrating the end of her birthday. She's turned 4 years old, and she then eats some chocolate cake, and it's an absolute delight. We then have the main narrative established in the next scene where Stephanie is looking at her science fair project. She's made a brain out of vegetables. We have some great banter between Kimmy and Stephanie, and we learn from Danny that Joey and Jesse have actually gone camping to get some footage for their business. And DJ also finds out that she's going to be performing Juliet in the Drama Festival's performance of Romeo and Juliet, and Danny is just taking all of this information in and declares himself super dad, and he flies Michelle out of the room, and it's absolutely adorable. And then DJ realizes at the end of this scene that Stephanie's science fair is on the same day as DJ's drama performance. Now, I will say a little later on there was an exceptionally obvious solution, and I'll talk more about that when we get there, but I feel like Danny completely overlooked something that would have made things exceptionally easy, but nevertheless, we'll get there when we get there. We do cut to Joey and Jesse on, I think, 2 occasions. And the first one, we see them among nature. There's a badger, there's a fox. It's really nice and helps to break up the main action. Danny is then frantic in the kitchen. Michelle is trying to help, and then Michelle makes things worse. And then Danny realizes that both of the events are tomorrow. And we definitely get some comedy from Kimmy in this scene. She is an absolute delight in this episode. And needless to say, DJ and Stephanie are both trying to get Danny to go to both of their events. And I will say I think he did, at this moment, the right thing. He sits them down in the kitchen and explains the problem. And he says that he's going to go to Stephanie's science fair. Because, quite rightly, he promised Stephanie he'd go to the science fair before DJ even found out that she was performing in the play. And I do feel like that is the sensible solution. You can't back out of a promise. Granted, he'd already made another promise to DJ, but that was his oversight more than anything else. And then things get worse. Obviously, Stephanie is quite happy, and then she sticks her fork into the vegetables for dinner, and it's awful for Stephanie, but she pulls out the brain. Danny thought the brain was the vegetables Jesse had left for dinner, and he'd cooked Stephanie's science fair project. Needless to say, she's very unhappy about this. We then cut back to Jesse and Joey, and things are quite happy again, and it's a beautiful scene. They sing this gorgeous song. We have all of these different animals. It's absolutely beautiful and so sweet, and I rather enjoyed it. We then go back to Danny, and this is the point where I feel like Danny just completely overlooked an obvious solution, because he said he's come up with a solution, and he's going to go to Stephanie's science fair first, and if he leaves at 4:18, he can get to see DJ's second scene. However, Stephanie points out that by doing that, Danny would miss the judging, and if Danny didn't get there until the second scene, Juliet's dead by that point. Okay, well then flip it. Go to the play first so you can see Juliet alive, and then go to the science fair so you're there in time for the judging. Problem solved. Very easy solution. And I don't understand why they overlooked that in the episode either, because as soon as they both, Stephanie and DJ, both said, well, that won't work for me, and that won't work for me, I need you here later and I need you there earlier, okay, then swap. Exceptionally obvious solution. And yeah, I think it was an oversight of Danny's, but also an oversight of the writers as well, because that was very obvious. So I don't love that they completely just missed a solution that was staring everybody in the face. Maybe Danny would have come to that conclusion eventually, but he went upstairs with Michelle and he said he was tired. And I think as soon as he said he was tired, it was obvious what was going to happen next. He lay down to have a little rest with Michelle, and he fell asleep, and he missed both of them. So maybe eventually he would have realised that all he needed to do was swap the events around, but he never got to that point because unfortunately he fell asleep. And what I do love about this is that the girls came home, both of them obviously annoyed that Danny didn't turn up. But then when they realised that something might have happened to Danny, they were just glad that he was okay. And that's the right response to have. They realised that they both tried to pull him in opposite directions and it wasn't the best attitude to have. And everybody realised that it was just a difficult situation. And I really, really admired how the girls handled that. So I rather enjoyed this episode. I think there are some really great moments. And I absolutely think that it's probably going to be quite relatable for anybody, not even just for single parents, but if you have multiple children and they all have events on the same day, that's going to cause problems. Even if you have more than one parent, every child is going to want both parents at the event. In general, there will be some exceptions. I didn't want my father, when I was performing in a school play, I actively told him to not go because I would be embarrassed and feel awkward. And I still feel that way if I'm doing something. I don't want people there that I know. I find it easier to perform in front of strangers. I don't know why. I feel like that's probably a common thought, actually. But certainly DJ really valued Danny being there, and that's something that she really wanted. So definitely a very interesting episode. I think some really great moments, and ultimately I can't fault it. Not a bad episode at all.